Everyone knows that Blackout does have a story behind it, but the sheer amount of names, factions, and events, as well as the sheer amount of reading required to understand it, makes it too hard to keep track of everything. In this video, I'm going to explain everything regarding the lore of Blackout, including all the different factions, key events, and important names found throughout the various journal entries and item descriptions. I'll also be laying out a timeline of events to get a visual on how and when important story beats happened. I'll also try to state my sources for all the information listed in the video, but if I miss something or you have questions on it, please leave a comment. On January 20th of 2028, the city of Mensong is placed under a strict quarantine by a district of the military known as S.T.I.N.G, which is short for the Specialized Tactical Infection Neutralization Group. The reason for why this happened is still currently unknown. Mensong is then placed under martial law and divided into 4 different sectors to more easily control the populace of the city: Somber, Culminer, Canal, and Fleur. A large wall, as well as the surrounding mountain range, is used to completely enclose Mensong, allowing no exit or entry. Each district is also given a nickname, those being Blackout, Opulence, Spillway, and Blossom. And this is likely why the game is titled Blackout, as we play within the Blackout district. The different names of the districts also give a little insight as to the nature of what they are like. Somber being the more poverty-ridden area of Mensong, with already bleak living conditions and poor infrastructure. The Blackout nickname is likely due to the frequent blackouts that occur within the district. The Culminer district is likely the wealthier side of Mensong, with Culminer being a French word meaning to culminate, to reach the top of something, or just simply the word peak. Its nickname, Opulence, also literally means great wealth or luxuriousness. The Canal district and its nickname Spillway imply a connection to water and waterways. The recent showcase of the new PvE mode for Blackout shows an area that appears to be at the edge of an ocean or lake. So the Canal district could be the part of Mensong that has access to seas, allowing the shipment of supplies to and from Mensong. The final district, Fleur, is another French word that translates to flower. Its nickname, Blossom, also basically means flower, being the flowers that trees and other plants can produce in the spring. Blossom is also mentioned in a found journal entry to be the providers of seeds to the Blackout district that allowed the creations of the rooftop farms that could be found in-game. All of these point to the Fleur district being centered around plants, possibly containing greenhouses or maybe overgrown abandoned buildings. I don't know, something like that. I don't know. As mentioned before, S.T.I.N.G is the Specialized Tactical Infection Neutralization Group, in charge of controlling the entirety of Mensong. S.T.I.N.G is responsible for many items and places within Blackout. Keycard restricted areas like Bunker, Military Base, the Laboratories, Metro Shipment, the Cargo Ambush Task, and the Access Denied facility are all S.T.I.N.G's doing. S.T.I.N.G is also responsible for the bounty boards and associating bounty cards that can be turned in for cash of brokers. Not only that, but S.T.I.N.G is also canonically the reason why the terminals dispense an allowance. The journal log for the terminal states that S.T.I.N.G uses this act of generosity as political leverage within the outside world. S.T.I.N.G has also created several pieces of high-powered military-grade weapons and armor. Weapons such as the Photon Accelerator and Blades, as well as the Operator, Commander, and Blade Dancer armor sets. The Skyfall tag is also the work of S.T.I.N.G, but who really cares about that? The Green and Azure inhalers are also synthesized by S.T.I.N.G. Due to their professional militarized creation, these two contain no downsides to using. I'm not entirely sure if the P90Z is made by S.T.I.N.G or not, as it's not directly stated that it is, but considering it uses photonic rounds, I'm going to say that it probably is made by S.T.I.N.G. While not created by S.T.I.N.G, they are also the reason why several pieces of contraband weapons are considered contraband. Following the Weapons of Mass Destruction Act of 2046 and the Advanced Arms Seizure Directive, S.T.I.N.G began to confiscate and dismantle dangerous weapons of warfare. Weapons such as the RSH-12, KS-23, AWM, GL-6, and RPG-18 all state in their descriptions how illegal they are, and how all are quickly confiscated by military personnel. This is why we can find all these weapons locked behind the red keycard doors inside the bunker. S.T.I.N.G would eventually release a statement saying that anyone who obtains and returns any illegal or dangerous weaponry could be awarded with temporary double rations. How long S.T.I.N.G was willing to actually follow through with this, however, is unclear. And S.T.I.N.G did a pretty good job at the seizure part, but not so much the dismantlement part, as all of the contraband items are in pretty good shape and not that hard to get. Moving on from S.T.I.N.G, we have probably the second most important faction in Blackout. The Quarterers are a large faction of sleazy dirtbags that have connections throughout all of Somber. Characters like the merchants, brokers, and possibly contractors are all part of the Quarterers. People such as the mysterious stranger and vandal that we speak with in Access Denied could also be a part of the Quarterers, but there's barely any info we know on either of them, other than the fact that Vandal seems to live in the Culminer district, where the ruckus of Access Denied can be heard. The Quarterers have some way of moving both weapons, supplies, and themselves in between districts without grabbing the attention of S.T.I.N.G. This is likely through the use of various underground tunnels throughout Mensong, likely the literal underground metro tunnels that are stated to have connections to all of the districts. The Quarterers are said to be stationed all over Mensong, and have various ties and connections to important figures throughout Somber. The journal entry for the merchants states that the Fleur district had a similar amount of merchants that are also present within Somber. The Quarterers seem to keep a close eye on their members, with the Desperate Times journal log stating that the Quarterers don't like it when their merchants go unchecked or missing. The Quarterers can essentially be seen as the true neutral faction in Mensong, as they don't really care who they have running their jobs for them, as long as they get done, and will provide services to anyone regardless of their faction. A little subsection of the Quarterers I'd like to talk about are called the Releasers, who specialize in synthesizing Ripper combat inhalers that aim to replicate the combat inhalers synthesized by S.T.I.N.G. Whereas S.T.I.N.G's combat inhalers are professionally made with no side effects, every combat inhaler created by the Releasers has some sort of side effect that seriously impair the body in one way or another, with the orange inhaler being capable of stopping your heart completely. And I don't know about you guys, but I felt so smart when I figured this out, as this is a really cool detail. While the Releasers have almost nothing in terms of in-game text to go off of as of now, I personally believe that they are with the Quarterers. But who knows, maybe new information will eventually come out to prove me wrong. With the situation as bleak as the one in Mensong, people are obviously going to want to take a stand against the quarantine and mistreatment from the government. And of course, I'm talking about the Rebels. The Rebels are arguably the largest faction, not only in lore, but also in-game. They're basically seen as the good guys. While the Rebels do have connections to Fleur and Culminer, they are mostly confined within Somber. The journal note for the Rebels, as well as the Mark of the Pen journal log, both refer to an event known as the Somber Riots. And while we don't have a specific date to place these riots under, I'd assume it would be fairly close to the initial quarantining of Mensong. And while this log is dated 2039, I don't really think that this is when the Somber Riots actually took place. This is likely just the author documenting the year this specific document was written. We know that the rebels were present during the Somber Riots, creating a diversion when the military began to fire into the crowd of protesters, taking the military's attentions away from the crowd and allowing them to escape. At the end of the Mark of a Pen journal log, the author states that many other rebels have similar stories to his, losing families and friends because of the senseless violence that riddles the streets. The rebels seem to genuinely have good intentions through and through, with them offering to help construct rooftop gardens and wooden structures in order to grow food for the district, and wanting to free themselves of S.T.I.N.G's control. The rebels are also technically responsible for several utilities that can be bought from merchants, all of these being the inventions of a member known as Blitz, who you can find in the rebel hideout working on a weapon. While Blitz may not be fully there in the head, he definitely is a genius when it comes to inventing weird contraptions, doohickeys, and gizmos. Blitz is the creator of all melee modifications you can buy from merchants. His working area even says coolest mods, with him working on a modded katana. The description of the impact booster also directly states that Blitz was the one who invented it. There isn't really much else to be said about Blitz other than he can be seen during the rebel hideout raid fighting back. And that's about everything for the rebels. But you can't really talk about the rebels without mentioning the Vultures are an organized crime group that have been compared to bandits or the mafia. The Vultures quickly and out of nowhere rose to power in 2034, and seem to have some sort of deal with the military, which is likely what allowed them to become so powerful so fast. The sheer amount of shipping containers, as well as the Advanced Arms Seizure Directive, seem to suggest the Vultures also participated in a little smuggling and arms dealing. Not only do Vultures threaten and rob civilians for debt that they owe, they also partake in literal acts of terrorism. Fun! Mentioned in the Clipped Wings entry, the military and Vultures seem to have an unspoken mutual agreement between each other, that as long as the Vultures don't cross any lines, the military will simply turn a blind eye to their doings. This fact seemed to be a bit of an open secret within the Vultures, but not one everyone knew about, and it seemed the higher-ups within the Vultures wanted to keep it that way. Once again, in the Clipped Wings log, someone known as Raptor is mentioned noticing the author of the log snooping around. Whether or not Raptor is the leader, or just a higher-up within the Vultures is unknown, as he is literally only ever mentioned once. But it seems Raptor isn't a very understanding guy, as the author mentions how Raptor began to catch on to his curiosity. Whether it be because of this snooping or something else, the Vultures would end up killing a person that the author had cared about deeply. Now, whether or not this person was also a Vulture is also unclear, or if it's a romantic or familiar relationship that they had with the author. But we do know that the Vultures aren't opposed to killing their own members, or family members of the Vultures if they step too far out of line. The author of Clipped Wings also states that he had given away information about the Vultures to someone before fleeing to the top of the crane. Whether it be to the rebels or someone else, we don't know. Clipped Wings is actually a pretty sad story and easily the best written out of all the journal entries. As the author finishes writing his final log, he mentions how he can hear who we can assume to be Raptor and the Vultures climbing to the top of the crane. He then writes how he's about to take his last leap without his wings, likely then jumping off of the crane in order to not give the Vultures the satisfaction of killing him. So yeah, the Vultures are definitely not the good guys, but I don't think that they're the bad guy either. I think that title would go to S.T.I.N.G. Our final two factions are ones we probably know the least about, as they're not very important. Outlanders are seemingly just people who are from districts other than Somber. They're seen as opportunists and are generally disliked among Somber citizens. The existence of Outlanders and possibly the Quarterers may prove that travel between districts is possible, just very difficult and tight-roped. Our character also mentions how they have seemingly moved from the Fleur district over to Somber, adding further evidence to this claim. Outlanders could also be considered the other neutral faction, although I believe Outlander is a moniker for people who aren't from Somber. The final faction we have are the Scrappers. The Scrappers are crafty and sadistic people who mostly reside within the metro tunnels beneath the district. The only Scrapper member we know of currently is Scourge, who runs a Scrapper arena where others can watch the bloodbaths that unfold within it. The Scrappers who watch the battles in the arena don't really seem to mind the insane amount of casualties that take place within it, as they just see it as entertainment. The Scrappers have also seemingly taken old operator parts and constructed their own to go against human fighters as well. The Scrappers are likely responsible for the gates and cargo containers placed all around the metro tunnels. How they managed to fit those down there is beyond me. The final and most horrifying invention of the Scrappers is the Rendbreaker, a great sword chainsaw hybrid that can cut through bones like butter. The Rendbreaker is what the Scrap operator uses within the arena, and can only be unlocked after defeating it for the first time. There is also an undated journal log that can be found within the metro tunnels, where a Scrapper named Solomon seemingly goes insane when he starts seeing things within the tunnels. This may hint towards the quarantine of Mensong to be related to the insanity Solomon is facing. Alternatively, the shadows he describes could be the upcoming Nightbound enemies seen within the Final Eclipse PvE mode, with the Nightbound being what was wanted to be kept out of Mensong. But if this gameplay takes place within Mensong, then perhaps the quarantine was to keep the Nightbound within Mensong. Mensong. Say Mensong 5 times fast. And with that, that is all of the different factions in Blackout explained. Using dates provided in journal logs, we can create a simple timeline to visualize the decline of Mensong. January 20th, 2028. The city of Mensong is placed under quarantine indefinitely. Between January and August of 2028, riots over the quarantine cause the military to fire upon civilians, and a soon-to-be rebel member loses his brother within the chaos. August 23rd of 2028. An artist describes the depressing sight of the once busy train station now devoid of activity. May 17th of 2032. An artist laments on how his art has begun to decline following the continued degradation of Medsong. Between May and October of 2034, the Vultures rise to power extremely quickly, seemingly out of nowhere. October 7th of 2034. The artist describes the bleak, smoggy air that covers the city, as sounds of fighting can be heard from far off in the distance, this likely being the rebels and Vultures fighting. Spring of 2035. Wooden structures and rooftop gardens are built all throughout the district to deal with the dwindling lack of supplies. Autumn 2039. A member of the rebels reflects on the somber riots and his brother's strange tendency to write on his hands. Winter 2046. The Advanced Arms Seizure Directive and Weapons of Mass Destruction Act are established in an attempt to crack down on illegal and dangerous weapons within Medsong. S.T.I.N.G offers double rations to anyone who retrieves and returns any contraband back to them. Winter 2054. A member of the Vultures flees to the top of the crane in an attempt to escape other Vultures preparing to kill him, before eventually jumping off to not give them the satisfaction of killing him. And that's the entire Blackout revival timeline as of now. There are 2 journal logs that are undated, but neither are really that important. A scrapper goes insane within the metro tunnels, and a S.T.I.N.G office manager complains to the maintenance team about leaving their stuff behind. But with that is the entire Blackout revival story explained. If I missed anything or you have questions, leave a comment. Okay, bye.